Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into the fascinating world of workplace psychology, specifically focusing on leadership and motivation.
Yeah, and we're using the Self-Sensei report as our main guide here.
It's a really comprehensive look, isn't it, at what makes people tick professionally and how leaders can, well, build environments where people actually thrive.
Exactly. And our mission for you listening in isn't just to, list the concepts. We want to pull out the real core insights,
Actionable stuff, right?
actionable knowledge, what fundamentally drives people at work, and how the best leaders tap into that. Think of this as your shortcut, basically.
A shortcut to getting up to speed on something pretty crucial for, well, any organization's success without getting totally bogged down.
Precisely. And hopefully you'll get some surprising facts, maybe a few aha moments along the way.
I'm counting on it. The report covers so much ground, foundational theories, leadership styles, what actually motivates us, practical strategies.
Even the challenges we're seeing now and what's emerging, the new trends.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Why is all this leadership, motivation, why is it so critical to begin with?
Well, first, it helps to define the field we're in. Organizational psychology,
Right.
which is basically the scientific study of how people behave in workplace settings. It takes psychological principles, research methods, and applies them.
Applies them to make things better. Performance, satisfaction.
Exactly that. Improving employee performance, job satisfaction, overall well-being, and even the efficiency of the whole organization.
So it's not just fluff, it actually has bottom line benefits.
Huge benefits. Understanding these principles helps build better relationships, stronger teams, even better hiring processes.
Okay.
And crucially, it gives you that deeper insight into what truly motivates people. Knowing that helps reduce turnover, manage conflict, build morale.
It sounds like it touches almost everything.
It really does. Developing managers, leadership skills, training, collaboration, it all connects back. Ultimately, it's about creating a place where people are productive and have a higher quality work life.
Which fuels success long term.
Right. You have to understand the emotional factors, the motivators, the rewards. It's all grounded in basic psychology.
Okay, got it. Understanding the human side is paramount.
Mm.
But the report also hammers home the role of leadership. What do we mean by leadership here? Is it just being the boss?
Not necessarily, no. Leadership broadly is about influence, how one person influences a group to reach a common goal.
So it doesn't have to be a formal title.
Exactly. It's the ability to guide and direct others, could be your reports, your peers, even your seniors sometimes. Organizational leadership then takes that and specifically ties it to the organization's goals. It's very action and results focused.
Okay.
It's like the central force shaping the culture, performance, the whole effectiveness of the place.
So leaders are kind of like cultural architects,
Yeah.
setting the whole tone.
That's a great way to put it, yes. And the significance is massive. Good leadership links directly to things like higher involvement, productivity, job satisfaction.
And bad leadership.
Yeah. Bad leadership breeds dissatisfaction, disengagement, high turnover. How leaders act directly impacts how people feel, their job satisfaction, their well-being. It's all tied together.
And it's not just a one-way thing.
Definitely not. It's dynamic. Leaders influence teams, but teams influence leaders too. So effectiveness really hinges on navigating that interaction ethically to hit shared goals.
Makes sense. Okay, and one more foundational piece before we get into the theories. Workplace motivation. What's the core definition we should hold on to?
Workplace motivation, it's that internal drive, that willingness to put effort towards your work goals.
Right.
Psychologically, it's seen as energetic forces. Some come from within you, some from the environment, the culture, the people, the structures.
And these forces determine what?
They determine the direction of your behavior, how intensely you pursue things, and how long you persist when things get tough.
So it's way more than just the paycheck then.
Oh, absolutely. So many factors play in. Tangible things like salary, yes, but also intangible stuff. Recognition, status, feeling accomplished, good relationships, feeling like your work actually matters.
Your personality probably affects it too.
Definitely. Personality or personal needs, how well you feel you fit in the environment, and its significance is just paramount for reaching goals.
There's a direct link to performance.
Direct link. Performance, productivity, teamwork. Some research even suggests a motivated employee can be vastly more productive than someone who isn't.
Which is why companies are so focused on it now.
Exactly. They want happier, more engaged, loyal employees.
Yeah.
But it's complex, that mix of internal drives and external factors. Leaders need a nuanced approach, understanding that what works for one person might not work for another.
Okay, foundations established. Let's decode leadership itself now. The report walks through how the theories evolved, starting with the early stuff, the trait era. What was the thinking back then?
Well, the very earliest ideas really centered on leaders being born, not made. You had the great man theory back in the 19th century.
Right, the idea that certain people are just destined for greatness.
Pretty much. Like, it was an innate thing, maybe even divinely given. Think Caesar, Gandhi, Lincoln. They were seen as having unique inborn traits that made them leaders.
So you either had it or you didn't.
Essentially, yes. That then shifted a bit into trait theories, early to mid-20th century. Still focused on characteristics, but maybe they could be inherited or acquired.
Like what kind of traits?
Things like intelligence, social skills, even physical attributes. They tried hard to identify the definitive list of leadership traits.
But they couldn't quite nail it down.
No, they couldn't find a consistent set that predicted effectiveness everywhere. So that approach kind of faded by the mid-20th century.
But it hasn't completely disappeared, has it? We still do personality tests for hiring.
That's true. The idea that certain traits help still influences things like psychometric assessments. But the big limitation was realizing traits alone don't guarantee success in every situation. The context matters.
Right, so if it's not just about who you are, what came next?
The focus shifted to what leaders actually do, the behavioral era.
Okay, so leaders are made, not born.
That was the core idea. It moved to observable actions, things you could learn and cultivate to lead well. Not inherent qualities, but concrete actions.
Like specific leadership styles.
Exactly. Research looked for patterns of behavior, like in Blake and Mooton's managerial grid, concern for people versus concern for production.
So leadership started looking more like a skill you could develop.
Precisely. Much more democratic, really, suggesting anyone could learn to be a leader. And that idea still underpins a lot of leadership training today, focusing on skills and behaviors.
But there was a catch.
Yeah, the limitation was often ignoring the context, the specific situation the leader was in.
Okay, so the situation matters. Which brings us neatly to situational and contingency theories. How did they change things?
They basically said, hold on, neither traits nor behaviors alone tell the whole story. The most effective style depends on the context.
The task, the team, the environment.
All of it. The
Yeah.
core idea. No single best way to lead. Effectiveness comes from matching the leader's style to the situation's demands.
So leaders need to be adaptable, change their approach.
Absolutely. Or, as Fiedler's contingency theory suggested, which was quite influential early on, maybe the leader's style is kind of fixed, so you either match the leader to the right situation or you change the situation to fit the leader.
Interesting.
But the main point was highlighting that critical interplay between the leader, the followers, and the situation. It paved the way for much more nuanced models.
It shows a real evolution in thinking, doesn't it? From traits to behaviors to the situation.
Definitely. A more sophisticated psychological understanding. Leadership isn't just one thing, it's many interacting factors. And developing leaders means looking beyond just skills to their ability to read and adapt to different situations and people.
Okay, now the report spends quite a bit of time on two really big ones. Transformational and transactional leadership. They sound almost like opposites. Let's start with transformational. What's that all about?
Transformational leadership is really about inspiration. It's about motivating your team to achieve extraordinary things, to go beyond their own expectations, even develop their own leadership potential.
So it's about a bigger vision.
Exactly. Creating a compelling vision for the future, fostering that deep, intrinsic motivation. It's a hugely influential idea today. And the research backs it up, links to better performance, satisfaction. Teams feel more accountable, more motivated.
It's about more than just checking boxes on tasks, then.
Much more. It's often broken down into the 4 I's. First is idealized influence. The leader is a charismatic, ethical role model. People trust them, admire them, want to be like them.
Like leading by example.
Absolutely. Actions speak louder. Then there's inspirational motivation. Articulating that clear, energizing vision, setting high standards, giving people a real sense of purpose, making them want to push boundaries.
Got it. What's third?
Intellectual stimulation. Creating an environment where creativity, innovation, critical thinking are encouraged. Welcoming new ideas, challenging assumptions, letting people think for themselves.
So encouraging people to think outside the box.
Precisely. And finally, individualized consideration. This is about empathy. Paying attention to each person's unique needs, providing personalized support and coaching, really nurturing their growth.
Training people as individuals.
Exactly. The overall impact is pretty profound. Boosts intrinsic motivation, strengthens the culture, increases commitment, innovation, engagement, morale. It's powerful.
That sounds almost like the ideal, doesn't it? But then there's transactional leadership. That sounds much more straightforward, like a simple exchange.
You've hit it. Transactional leadership focuses on that exchange, defining roles, tasks, monitoring performance, and then, rewards or punishments based on results.
So it appeals more to self-interest.
Largely, yes. Motivation comes from tangible incentives or avoiding negative consequences. Key things you see are clear goals, close monitoring, rewards for success, penalties for failure, performance feedback, often a more hierarchical structure.
So it's more management, ensuring compliance rather than inspiration.
That's a fair distinction. And it can be effective, especially for clear, short-term goals or situations needing strict procedures. Think sales targets, maybe emergency response. It provides stability.
But the downside?
Because it relies so much on those external carrots and sticks, it can sometimes stifle creativity and that long-term intrinsic engagement if it's the only style used.
Okay, so are they totally separate?
Right.
Or can leaders use both transformational and transactional approaches?
That's a really key question. And no, they're not mutually exclusive. In fact, the most effective leaders often blend elements of both. Well, think about it. Transactional approaches can provide the necessary structure, clear expectations, fair rewards, the foundation.
Right, the basic framework.
Exactly. And then, layered on top, transformational behaviors can inspire that higher commitment, encourage innovation, foster growth. People need to know what's expected and what they get in return, and that's the transactional part, feeling secure and fairly treated.
But they also want more than that.
They also crave meaning, purpose, inspiration, the transformational stuff, to be truly engaged and go the extra mile. So, integrating both lets leaders address a wider range of psychological needs, both extrinsic and intrinsic.
A blend makes a lot of sense. Now, the report also mentions other styles, autocratic, democratic, laissez-faire. These seem more about control, don't they?
They do. They represent a spectrum of how much authority the leader holds onto versus how involved employees are. Autocratic is where the leader keeps all the authority, makes decisions alone, emphasizes discipline.
When would that work?
Maybe with highly structured tasks, brand new employees needing clear direction, or in a crisis needing fast decisions. But generally, it's linked to dissatisfaction, high turnover, because there's so little autonomy. Motivation is usually extrinsic, do this or else.
And democratic is the flip side.
Pretty much. Democratic or participative leadership actively involves employees, seeks input, aims for consensus.
And that generally works better for motivation.
Often, yes. It correlates with higher satisfaction, morale, engagement. People feel valued, their contributions matter. It tends to build intrinsic motivation.
Then there's laissez-faire. That sounds like leave them alone.
It is very hands-off, delegates authority with minimal guidance. Generally, it's seen as ineffective.
Unless
the team is exceptionally self-motivated, highly skilled, and totally clear on their goals. Otherwise, the lack of direction is usually just demotivating.
Gotcha. The report also brings up servant, charismatic, and empowering leadership. More modern takes.
Definitely more reflective of current thinking. Servant leadership flips the pyramid. The leader's main job is to serve others, employees, customers, community.
What does that look like in practice?
Humility, empathy, listening, awareness, persuasion, not command, stewardship, commitment to people's growth. It fosters a positive atmosphere, boosts intrinsic motivation, loyalty, teamwork, ethical behavior. It hits those needs for growth, belonging, purpose.
And charismatic. That sounds like it depends a lot on the leader's personality.
It does lean on that. Charismatic leaders motivate through inspiration, coaching, enthusiasm. They're strong communicators, paint a compelling vision, build trust.
The psychological effect.
Boosts morale, motivation, loyalty, creativity. People connect with the leader's vision and energy.
Okay, and empowering leadership. Giving power away.
That's the essence. Empowering leadership is about actively sharing authority, encouraging self-management, building confidence and capability. Delegating effectively, fostering autonomy in how work gets done, providing resources. It really boosts employees' sense of empowerment and initiative, super important in hybrid work, for example.
Because it hits those core needs.
Exactly. Directly addresses the need for autonomy and competence. Leads to more intrinsic motivation, more ownership.
It feels like these newer styles, transformational, servant, charismatic, empowering, they all seem to share some common ground.
They absolutely do. There's a clear trend. They all emphasize intrinsic motivation, trust-based relationships, valuing individuals, promoting growth and autonomy.
A shift away from just command and control.
Definitely. towards more human-centered approaches, recognizing that to really motivate people long-term, you need to connect on a deeper psychological level, address needs for meaning, development, self-direction, belonging.
Okay, great overview of leadership styles. Let's switch gears fully to motivation now, what actually drives us. The report groups theories into needs-based and cognitive process-based. Starting with needs, Maslow's hierarchy is the classic one, isn't it?
It is. Developed back in the 40s, Maslow saw our needs like a pyramid. At the bottom, physiological needs.
Food, water, basic survival stuff. At work, maybe salary, decent conditions.
Exactly. Then comes safety needs, job security, a safe workplace, benefits.
Makes sense then.
Social needs, belonging, relationships, positive interactions at work. Above that, esteem needs recognition, respect, feeling competent, achieving things.
And right at the top.
Self-actualization, reaching your full potential, personal growth, doing challenging, meaningful work.
And the key idea is you have to satisfy the lower levels first. Can't worry about self-actualization if you're worried about paying the rent.
Precisely. Lower needs need to be reasonably met before higher ones become strong motivators. And once a need is satisfied, it stops being such a powerful driver.
So for leaders, it means
Get the basics right first, fair pay, safe conditions. Then you can think about motivating with recognition or growth opportunities. It's foundational for understanding the diverse needs people have.
okay. Then there's Hertzberg's two-factor theory. How does that fit in? Is it similar?
It's related, but offers a different angle. Hertzberg said there are two distinct sets of factors at work. First, hygiene factors.
Hygiene, like keeping things clean.
Sort of. It's about the job context. Things like company policies, supervision quality, salary, working conditions, relationships, job security.
Okay, and what's Hertzberg's point about them?
His point was, if these are bad or missing, people get dissatisfied. But, and this is key, just having them be adequate doesn't automatically make people satisfied or motivated.
So they're more about preventing dissatisfaction than
Right.
actively creating satisfaction.
Exactly. They prevent unhappiness. Then he identified motivators. These are intrinsic to the job content.
Like,
Achievement, recognition, the work itself being interesting, responsibility, advancement opportunities, growth possibilities. Hertzberg argued these are the primary drivers of job satisfaction and motivation.
so satisfaction and dissatisfaction aren't just opposites on one scale.
Correct. They're influenced by different things. So to truly motivate, leaders need to focus on enriching jobs with these motivators, not just fixing hygiene factors. Go beyond preventing unhappiness to actively foster satisfaction and drive.
So taken together, Maslow and Hertzberg,
Mm-hmm.
they seem to complement each other.
They really do. Meeting those basic extrinsic needs, Maslow's lower levels, Hertzberg's hygiene factors, that's the essential foundation. You gotta have it.
But the real drive comes from higher up.
Generally, yes. Genuine motivation and satisfaction often stem from those higher-order intrinsic factors, Maslow's upper levels, Hertzberg's motivators. So it's a two-step process. Ensure the baseline of fairness and security, then leverage intrinsic drivers.
Okay, let's move to the cognitive and process-based theories. These focus more on our thought processes, right? How we think about motivation. First is self-determination theory, SDT. What's its core idea?
SDT says we all have three innate fundamental psychological needs. First, autonomy.
The need to feel in control. Choice.
Exactly. Control over our behavior, decisions, feeling like we endorse what we do. Second, competence.
Feeling effective, capable, mastering things.
Right. And third, relatedness. The need to feel connected, belong, cared for, respected.
And if these three needs are met at work,
Then it fosters intrinsic motivation, growth, well-being, peak performance. Leaders can support this by giving choices, autonomy, providing skill development and good feedback, competence, and building a supportive, inclusive team vibe, relatedness. It's a great framework for cultivating that high-quality, self-driven motivation.
next up, Room's expectancy theory. Sounds like we do some mental math before deciding to try hard.
You're spot on. Room suggests motivation is based on our conscious expectations about outcomes. It boils down to three things. First, expectancy.
Do I believe my effort will lead to good performance?
Precisely. Second, instrumentality. Do I believe good performance will lead to certain outcomes or rewards?
Okay, and third,
Valence. How much do I actually value those potential outcomes or rewards?
and if any of those are low motivation tanks.
Exactly. The overall motivational force is like expectancy times instrumentality times valence. If any part is zero, the whole thing is zero. So for leaders, it means clarifying expectations, clearly linking performance to rewards people actually value. It highlights that cognitive calculation we do.
Then there's Adam's equity theory. That's the fairness one, right? comparing ourselves to others.
Exactly. Equity theory is all about perceived fairness. We're motivated to maintain a fair balance between our inputs, effort, skills, time, and our outputs, pay, recognition, benefits.
But we don't judge that in a vacuum.
No, that's the crucial bit. We compare our input-output ratio to our perception of others' ratios, colleagues, people in similar jobs, even our past selves.
And if it feels unfair, if we feel underpaid or overworked compared to someone else,
It creates psychological distress. We feel motivated to restore equity. Maybe we reduce our effort, ask for a raise, change who we compare ourselves to, distort our perception, or even quit.
so leaders really need to focus on transparency and fairness in rewards and recognition.
Absolutely, because those feelings of unfairness are incredibly demotivating. Social comparison is powerful.
Okay, last one in this group. Locke and Latham's goal-setting theory. This one seems pretty practical.
It is, and it's one of the most strongly supported theories out there. It basically says that setting specific and challenging goals leads to higher performance than vague goals, easy goals, or no goals at all.
But there are conditions, right?
Yes. The goals need to be accepted by the person, and they need feedback on their progress. There are 5 key principles: clarity, challenge, commitment, feedback, and managing task complexity, maybe breaking down big tasks.
Smart goals fit right in here, don't they? Specific, measurable.
Achievable, relevant, time-bound. Exactly. SMART goals are a direct application. It's a powerful tool for leaders because clear, challenging goals focus attention, mobilize effort, encourage persistence, and help people develop strategies.
So putting these cognitive theories together, it's clear motivation isn't just about needs. It's also about how we think, judge fairness, calculate odds, and aim for targets.
Absolutely. Employees are active participants. They assess fairness, equity, figure out effort-reward probabilities, expectancy, are driven by needs for autonomy, competence, relatedness, SDT, and respond to clear targets, goal setting. Leaders need to engage people cognitively, be transparent, show clear paths to rewards, involve them in setting goals, support self-determination, ensure justice.
Now, the report draws a clear line between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Let's unpack that difference. What's intrinsic?
Intrinsic motivation comes from inside. You do something because you find the activity itself satisfying, enjoyable, challenging.
Driven by.
Internal factors. Fulfillment, passion, curiosity, feeling competent, having autonomy, growing personally. The work itself is the reward.
And this usually leads to better work.
Often, yes. Higher quality, more creativity, more persistence, stronger long-term commitment.
And extrinsic motivation, that's the opposite, driven by external factors.
Exactly. Doing something to get a separate outcome, tangible rewards like money or promotions, or avoiding punishment like getting reprimanded.
Yeah.
The motivation is external to the task.
Can be positive, like going for a bonus, or negative, like avoiding being yelled at.
Right. It can be effective for specific behaviors, short-term goals, or maybe tasks that aren't inherently interesting.
So is one type better than the other for the workplace?
It's more complex than that. Their interplay matters. There's something called the over-justification effect.
What's that?
It's where giving an extrinsic reward for something someone already enjoys doing intrinsically can actually reduce their internal interest. They start thinking, I'm only doing this for the reward now.
Oh, right. That can backfire.
It can. But extrinsic rewards aren't always bad for intrinsic motivation. If a reward provides information like recognition confirming competence, it can actually help. The ideal is often a balance. Nurture intrinsic drivers, but also provide fair extrinsic rewards that support people.
A really important point for leaders designing reward systems.
Definitely. You have to be strategic. Over-rely on extrinsic stuff and you might kill passion. Ignore basic extrinsic needs and people get dissatisfied. The goal is often to use extrinsic rewards to support competence and value, not make them the only reason for effort. That helps keep intrinsic motivation alive.
Okay, fantastic breakdown of the theories. Now let's connect the dots. How do leadership and motivation really interact on the ground? How do different leadership styles impact motivation?
The connection is direct and significant. The style a leader uses powerfully shapes the team's motivation. Some styles are just much better at fostering drive.
Like which ones?
While transformational and democratic participative styles are generally great for boosting intrinsic motivation.
What is that?
Transformational leaders inspire with vision, make people feel valued and capable. Democratic leaders involve people, giving them ownership. This usually leads to higher morale, engagement, satisfaction, productivity, even more innovation.
Okay. What about transactional leadership? We said that's more about rewards and punishments.
Right. So transactional leadership primarily drives extrinsic motivation. It can work for clear, short-term goals, but if that's all there is, it can stifle creativity and that deeper, long-term drive. Needs balance.
And those more controlling styles, like autocratic.
Autocratic leadership, being directive with little input, tends to hinder intrinsic motivation. Lack of autonomy makes people feel undervalued, maybe fearful, often leads to dissatisfaction, turnover. Motivation is extrinsic comply, or else.
What about the hands-off laissez-faire style?
Laissez-faire often leads to a lack of direction and support, which usually hurts motivation, performance, satisfaction. Unless the team is super self-sufficient, that lack of involvement is demotivating, feels like abandonment.
In the newer styles, servant, charismatic, empowering.
Generally positive impacts. Servant, charismatic, and empowering styles tend to boost morale and intrinsic motivation, leading to better productivity. They focus on growth, well-being, inspiration, shared authority, autonomy, tapping into those internal drives and needs.
So what's the common thread? What's the underlying mechanism linking style to motivation?
It really comes down to how well the leadership style addresses those fundamental psychological needs we keep talking about. Autonomy, competence, relatedness, purpose, safety.
Ah, okay.
Styles that empower, support growth, value contributions, foster connection. They ignite intrinsic motivation. Styles with too much control or neglect undermine it.
The report really emphasizes the role of those self-determination theory needs, autonomy, competence, relatedness, as mediators.
Yeah.
Can you explain how leadership actions translate into motivation through that SDT lens?
Yeah, SDT provides a great explanation for how specific leader behaviors impact motivation. It's not just the label of the style, but what the leader actually does to support or thwart those three core needs.
So give me an example for autonomy.
Okay, autonomy support. Leaders do this by giving choices, encouraging initiative, minimizing controlling language, really listening to perspectives. Empowering leadership often does this well. Micromanagement, obviously, crushes autonomy.
And competence. How do leaders support that?
Competence support involves things like setting clear expectations, giving constructive feedback, acknowledging effort and improvement, providing skill development opportunities. Transformational leaders often excel here with their intellectual stimulation and individual support.
Makes sense. And relatedness, connection.
Relatedness support is about showing care, building trust, fostering belonging, encouraging teamwork. Servant leadership, with its empathy focus, is strong here.
So the key insight is, it's less about the style name and more about how the leader's actions make people feel about their autonomy, competence, and connection.
Exactly. Those feelings directly impact the quality and level of their motivation. SDT explains why positive styles work because they nurture these fundamental needs, leading to that high-quality intrinsic drive and well-being.
Another huge factor the report brings up is psychological safety. How does that fit into this leadership motivation puzzle?
It's absolutely fundamental. Psychological safety is that shared belief in a team that it's okay to take interpersonal risks.
Risks like what?
Speaking up with ideas, asking questions, admitting you made a mistake, even challenging how things are done, all without fearing you'll be punished or humiliated.
So feeling safe to be yourself and contribute fully.
Precisely. There are even levels to it: feeling included, feeling safe to learn, make mistakes, safe to contribute your skills, and ultimately, safe to challenge the status quo constructively.
And why is that so critical for motivation and engagement?
Because it's the bedrock. When people feel psychologically safe, they're far more likely to be engaged and intrinsically motivated. They feel empowered to bring their best work, share innovative ideas, take necessary risks, because they're not held back by fear.
That internal drive can flourish then.
Exactly. If you're constantly worried about criticism or blame, you won't be fully invested, you won't take initiative, you won't risk the things needed for innovation. Research even shows feeling excluded can literally impact cognitive function.
Wow. And leaders are key to creating this safety.
Pivotal. Key behaviors include modeling openness and vulnerability themselves, inviting diverse perspectives, responding constructively when people fail or give feedback, fostering inclusion, especially important in diverse teams.
So it's not just a nice to have.
Not at all. It's a prerequisite for higher level thinking and behavior innovation, problem solving, engagement. Without safety, motivational strategies will likely just fall flat. It allows intrinsic motivation to thrive.
It's about creating that space where fear doesn't dominate.
Yes. That foundation of trust and security lets people be fully engaged, take risks, contribute their best, leading to way more motivation and innovation.
Let's dig into some specific drivers now. The report talks about the power of purpose and meaning. How does that fuel motivation?
People are just far more motivated when they see their work as meaningful, when it contributes to something bigger than just the task itself.
Connects to Maslow's higher needs, right? Esteem, self-actualization.
Exactly. The desire to make a difference, realize potential. Viktor Frankl talked about purpose not just resulting from motivation, but being a fundamental driver, helping people overcome huge challenges.
So it's about linking daily grind to a bigger picture.
Yes, and leaders are crucial here. They can personalize purpose, connect work to individual values. They can constantly link daily tasks back to the bigger mission, showing how each person contributes.
Getting people involved in shaping the mission could help too.
Definitely fosters ownership. And aligning personal career vision with the company's vision, that's incredibly powerful. Purpose gives the why and the emotional connection. It's a resilient, intrinsic motivator.
The report also highlights recognition and feedback. We know people like appreciation, but what's the deeper psychology?
Well, recognition, acknowledging contributions, effort, achievement is powerful positive reinforcement. When it's genuine, specific, and timely, it boosts morale, engagement, performance, loyalty.
It feels good intrinsically, being valued.
Yes, feeling valued and competent. And it can be extrinsically rewarding, too. If linked to bonuses, etc., it helps people see their impact. Research links high engagement to feeling recognized.
And feedback, how is that different?
Feedback is about providing information on performance strengths, areas for improvement. Regular, constructive, specific feedback is vital for growth, clarity, sustained motivation. Lack of it makes people feel neglected, undervalued, demotivated.
So it's not just the annual review.
God, no. Both recognition and feedback tap into core needs. Recognition hits esteem, feeling respected, and competence, acknowledging skills. Feedback, especially developmental feedback, supports competence by giving info needed to improve.
And they can strengthen relationships too.
For sure, strengthen relatedness. Think of them as essential psychological inputs. They tell you you're valued, help you understand your impact, guide your efforts. Without them, people feel lost and unappreciated, and motivation drops.
Okay, we've got the theory down. Let's talk practical application. What concrete strategies can leaders use to actually do this stuff? Foster motivation.
All right, let's get practical. Based on self-determination theory, focusing on autonomy, competence, relatedness.
How do you foster autonomy in practice?
Give people more say in how they do their work. Involve them in decisions. Offer flexibility if possible. Avoid micromanaging, delegate real responsibility. Empower ownership.
And fostering competence.
Invest in skills coaching, training, mentoring. Give regular, specific, constructive feedback. Assign meaningful, challenging tasks that stretch people. And, crucially, recognize achievements and progress.
Okay. And relatedness. Building connections.
Cultivate a positive, supportive culture. Emphasize a shared mission, encourage teamwork, facilitate team building, show trust and support actively. These actions intentionally target those core needs and boost intrinsic motivation.
What about specific actions for goals and feedback?
For effective goal setting, use SMART goals. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. Ensure they're challenging but doable. Get employee buy-in involvement increases commitment.
And for feedback.
Providing effective feedback. Make it regular, timely, constructive, specific. Focus on progress. And always link tasks back to bigger objectives to give context and meaning. Goals direct effort. Feedback helps adjust course. It empowers self-regulation.
The report mentioned job crafting too. How can leaders support employees doing that?
Job crafting is employee-driven. They proactively reshape their job to align better with their strengths, interests, passions. Great for intrinsic motivation.
How do they reshape it?
3 ways. Task crafting, changing tasks. Relational crafting, changing interactions. Cognitive crafting, reframing how they see the job's purpose.
So how can a leader help?
First, help employees identify their motivations values. Encourage them to visualize their ideal role. Then, have open talks about potential tweaks, maybe trial periods, small changes. The leader needs to be open, flexible, encourage initiative, but also ensure it aligns with team goals. It's basically employees applying STT to themselves with the leader's support.
Building team cohesion and a supportive climate sounds vital too. Practical steps.
Absolutely. For building team cohesion, promote open, honest communication. Foster inclusivity, value all perspectives. Encourage collaboration team projects, cross-training, organize team-building activity.
And champion psychological safety.
Crucial. Create that environment where people feel safe to be themselves, speak up, make mistakes. A cohesive, supportive team acts like a buffer against stress and amplifies motivation. It meets that need for relatedness.
The report also mentioned evidence-based tools like Gallup Q12 or building resources. How do those work?
Evidence-based interventions give structured ways to improve things. The Gallup Q12 survey asks 12 specific questions linked to engagement and performance. Managers use the results to have conversations, pinpoint issues, take action. Manager quality is huge for team engagement.
What about building resources?
There's personal resource building, enhancing things like self-efficacy, resilience, optimism through mindfulness, stress management training, helps people cope with demands.
And job resource building.
That's about increasing resources in the job autonomy, social support, feedback, development ops. Drawn from the job demands resources model. Job crafting is an example. These resources boost motivation, engagement, well-being, and buffer against demands.
So it's about systematically assessing needs and boosting resources, like building psychological capital.
Exactly. A proactive approach, creating an environment that fosters engagement and builds resilience. It's a strategic investment in your people.
Okay, let's shift to some modern workplace hurdles. Managing stress and preventing burnout is huge right now. What should leaders know?
It's critical. Stress and burnout can come from organizational demands, unrealistic expectations, conflicts, lack of resources, or personal factors like poor work-life balance. And leader stress is contagious.
How does leader stress affect things?
It impairs their thinking, makes them more anxious, irritable, maybe less transformational. For employees, it means lower morale, poor communication, less productivity, more negativity. Burnout itself is exhaustion, cynicism, feeling ineffective. It's serious.
So what's the strategy?
It needs a dual approach. Organizationally, fix the root causes, workload control, rewards, community, fairness, values, improve the culture.
And for leaders themselves?
Build personal resilience, mindfulness, balance, support, positive outlook, managing emotions, and show empathy to their teams, provide resources, offer flexibility. Importantly, recognize burnout is often a systemic issue, not just individual failure. Fix the system and build resilience.
Another big one, resistance to change. Why does that happen psychologically, and how can leaders manage it?
Resistance is common, often rooted in psychology. Lack of awareness, the what's in it for me, fear about job impact, losing autonomy or status, fear of the unknown, job security, ability to cope, culture shifts, lack of trust in leadership, feeling excluded from decisions, or just a risk-averse culture.
So how do you overcome it?
You need a thoughtful approach. Frameworks like Kotter's 8-step model help create urgency, build a coalition, clear vision, empower action, get short-term wins, sustain it, embed it. It uses psychology like loss aversion, social influence, clarity, motivation.
And any other models?
Prashi's 80-car model is good too. Focuses on awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, reinforcement. Their advice: anticipate resistance, engage people, use resistance managers, address root causes with empathy, ensure cultural fit, communicate transparently, the WIFFM, provide support and training.
So resistance isn't always irrational.
Often not. It's natural. People perceive threats to their safety, competence, autonomy. Good change leadership means diagnosing those concerns and addressing them with communication, involvement, support, empathy.
Trust in leadership seems like the bedrock for everything. How can leaders build and keep it, especially when things are tough?
Trust is absolutely foundational. Without it, you get fear, uncertainty, less transparency, less innovation, lower performance. Research shows its huge impact.
So how do you build it? What actions?
Consistency is key. Demonstrate credibility, honesty, transparency, competence, follow through, admitting mistakes, show respect, value people, listen, treat with dignity, ensure fairness, equitable policies, rewards, show empathy, compassion, genuine care, practice open communication, active listening, offer recognition, appreciation, and be authentic, accountable. Integrity, taking responsibility.
Sounds like fulfilling an unspoken contract.
Exactly. The relational psychological contract based on perceived competence, benevolence, integrity. Consistently showing these builds trust, breaking them erodes it fast.
Poor communication is another killer for motivation. What are the effects, and how can leaders fix it?
Oh, the effects are wide-ranging. Feeling neglected, undervalued, confused, frustrated, lack of motivation, lower productivity, mistakes, tension, damaged morale and trust, rumors, disengagement. It's corrosive.
How to improve it?
Leaders need transparency and visibility. Be accessible, communicate regularly, honestly, maybe personalize it. Encourage two-way communication. Feedback channels, active listening, using input. Be clear in goals and expectations. Follow up on things. Maybe invest in communication training. Use the right channels for the right message.
It sounds like communication is the main way psychological needs get met or missed.
It really is. Clear, transparent, empathetic, two-way communication builds trust, conveys purpose, gives recognition, clarifies expectations, fosters safety and belonging. Communication failures weaken all those foundations. It's a core leadership skill.
Okay, one last challenge. Micromanagement. We know it's bad, but what's the psychological damage?
Micromanagement, excessive supervision, controlling details, redoing work, implying distrust is toxic. Psychologically, it causes reduced autonomy, making people feel disempowered. This decreases motivation and engagement because they feel untrusted. It stifles creativity because people fear criticism. It increases stress. And it hinders learning and growth because people don't get to solve problems or take ownership.
Big impact on morale and productivity.
Huge. Most micromanaged employees report drops in both. From an STT view, it directly undermines autonomy and competence. It removes control, questions capability, shifts focus to compliance fear instead of interest commitment, can even lead to learned helplessness, disengagement. Total motivation killer.
Work itself is changing rapidly. How can leaders effectively lead and motivate in remote and hybrid setups?
It definitely requires adjustments. Challenges include communication gaps, maintaining culture and trust from afar, ensuring equity for everyone regardless of location, and tackling employee isolation, blurred boundaries, stress, burnout.
So what works? What strategies?
Empowering leadership becomes even more vital. Trust, autonomy, self-management support. Clear goals and expectations are non-negotiable. Regular check-ins and transparent feedback are crucial for connection. Leaders need to actively foster connection using tech, virtual team events, encouraging social chat, and prioritizing well-being, mental health, breaks, balance is essential.
So it requires being more deliberate, more intentional.
Yeah. Exactly. Less informal interaction means you need more structured efforts to build trust, connect, communicate clearly, support people, recognize contributions, consciously addressing autonomy, competence, and relatedness across the distance.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, is a huge focus now. How does that connect to motivation and inclusive leadership?
DEI isn't just the right thing to do, it's smart for motivation in business. Diversity brings more perspectives, boosting creativity, innovation, problem solving, better decisions, less groupthink.
And the equity and inclusion parts.
They foster belonging and value for everyone that directly impacts satisfaction, motivation, engagement, retention. Key to this is inclusive leadership.
What does that look like?
Openness, accessibility, collaboration, empathy, valuing everyone, being self-aware about biases, empowering all voices, especially underrepresented ones, creating psychological safety.
And the impact on motivation and innovation.
It directly promotes psychological safety and empowerment. When people feel safe and valued, they're more motivated to contribute unique ideas, innovate, take initiative. DEI efforts really unlock the benefits of diversity by creating the right psychological conditions, safety, empowerment, belonging for all talent to thrive.
We often have multiple generations in the workplace now. Baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z. How do leaders handle potentially different expectations and motivators?
It's true, there can be varying preferences for leadership style, communication, feedback, what motivates them. Maybe younger generations prioritize flexibility, development, purpose more, while others focus more on advancement or security.
But are there common threads?
Oh, yes. Most people, regardless of generation, want trust and respect, growth opportunities, recognition, meaningful work, fair pay.
So how should leaders adapt?
High emotional intelligence is key. Be flexible in communication and feedback. Tailor motivation and recognition where possible. Foster an inclusive culture, encouraging cross-generational collaboration, maybe reverse mentoring.
But avoid stereotypes.
Definitely. Use generational insights as a guide, but focus on individual needs. Core human needs are universal. How they're expressed might differ. EI helps personalize leadership.
The world feels increasingly unpredictable, VUCA, the report calls it. Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. What's adaptive leadership and why is it needed now?
VUCA sums up the turbulence. Adaptive leadership is about flexibility, learning, resilience, collaboration to navigate challenges that aren't just technical problems, but often involve shifts in values, beliefs.
What do adaptive leaders do?
High EI, commitment to justice, strong character, continuous learning. They get on the balcony for perspective, identify the real adaptive challenge, manage distress, theirs and others, keep focus, empower people to find solutions, give the work back, protect dissenting voices, encourage experimentation, build trust, delegate.
How does this help organizations and motivation in VUCA times?
It boosts agility, problem solving, innovation, engages employees through ownership and purpose, provides direction amid chaos, keeping motivation up by making problem solving feel manageable. It helps people adjust psychologically to new realities, manage uncertainty, learn collaboratively. It builds collective resilience.
Lastly, the report mentions humble leadership as an emerging idea. What's that about?
Humble leadership is about leaders acknowledging their own limits and mistakes, appreciating followers' strengths, modeling being teachable, being open, showing sincere concern for well-being.
Then the impact.
Research shows positive effects on intrinsic motivation, engagement, creativity, psych safety, proactivity, job satisfaction. It acts like a job resource, buffering demands. Fits SDT well, supports autonomy, valuing input, competence, recognizing strengths, relatedness, genuine connection.
So by downplaying their own ego.
They elevate followers' potential, create a safe, appreciative space, foster mutual respect, shared learning. Humility directly fuels intrinsic motivation by satisfying competence and relatedness needs. It's a powerful enabler of growth and engagement.
Wow, this has been an incredibly rich deep dive. To wrap things up, what are the main takeaways from the Self-Sensei report you really want people to hold on to?
I think the core message is just how deeply intertwined leadership and motivation are psychologically. Effective leadership really means understanding and actively catering to those fundamental human needs and thought processes.
The theories give us frameworks.
Exactly. Frameworks like Maslow, Hertzberg, SDT, goal setting. But the practical application is key, focusing on autonomy, competence, relatedness, purpose, recognition, safety, trust. That's what creates thriving workplaces.
And the modern world keeps throwing curveballs.
It does, which demands adaptive, inclusive leadership. And excitingly, neuroscience is increasingly backing up why these psychological principles are so important for how our brains work at work.
So for you listening, we really hope this deep dive has given you a clearer, maybe more nuanced view of what drives us professionally and how leaders can tap into that. Hopefully you had a few aha moments and feel more clued in now.
Then maybe a final thought to mull over as you go. Think about the main leadership style you've experienced, or the one you tend to use. How could the psychology we've discussed today help you connect better, motivate better, whether you're in a formal role or just influencing others? What's one small change you could try based on these insights? Keep exploring these ideas. They're absolutely critical in today's world of work.